What's up, everyone? It's Dakota, and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering video. And today we're going to be talking about the Orzhov Midrange deck for the Modern format. This is a deck that, with the banning of Underworld Breach, I think can slot into that #1 spot and be one of the best decks in the Modern format. Of course, this was the second most played deck in Modern going through the Regional Championship season, probably by about the end of the Regional Championship cycle going into the RCQ season. I think that you absolutely had to have a game plan for Orzhov Midrange and be prepared for it, just because, again, it was probably one of the best counters to the Underworld Breach decks and had a very decent matchup percentage against the rest of the general metagame. And if you were a player that had a pretty good knowledge of the Modern format, as well as kind of how the deck interacts with each other, and really being a person that's played about 15-20 matches with this deck already, there's a lot that you can go through, and it ends up going pretty deep as well. So we're going to be checking it out today and kind of giving you my reasons, breaking down the deck, and why that this could be one of the best decks to be playing in Modern right now. But before we get into any of that stuff, if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to see more videos from me, you can check out my channel for more Modern and Standard videos, as well as other longer form content for your viewing pleasure. So if you're not already subscribed, and I know it's pretty hard because there's a lot of people that I find out that I'm not subscribed to on YouTube, just because I always get their videos suggested to me. So just please make sure that if you want more videos from me, that you go ahead and check that you're just subscribed. And if you're not, please consider subscribing, ring the notification bell so you can find those new videos when they get posted. Of course, if you want to support me even further, I have a few links in the description down below. One goes to my Discord server. You can go ahead and join over there, as well as checking out the Twitch channel over at twitch.tv/Crawdaddy23, where we do stream a lot of Modern here as of late, because that is the current RCQ season, and we're going to be getting into Standard, trying to throw a little bit in there to mix it up a little bit and prepare for that Regional Championship for the Standard format. And of course, check out the Casual Spikes Podcast YouTube channel, where me and my co-host Randy over at MTG with Randy talk a lot about what's going on in competitive Magic. We kind of go over some of the major events going on, breaking down the day 1, day 2 metagames, so on and so forth, hopefully preparing you for your next Regional Championship qualifier or Regional Championship event. So go ahead and check out the podcast over there, link down in the description below. Lastly, I want to thank the sponsor channel, Manatraders. If you use my code in the description down below, you'll get 5% off your monthly subscription, meaning that you could rent cards, such as cards for the Orzhov Midrange deck, play them on Magic Online, and play them in various different leagues and or challenges to potentially qualify for the Pro Tour through the online circuit. And the best thing about it is, of course, that you're renting the cards, meaning that if you get tired of playing Orzhov Midrange and maybe you want to play some Boros Energy, maybe you want to go and play Rhinos or something like that, you have the ability to do so, and they are lightning fast on their trading as well. So I'd like to thank Manatraders for being a sponsor of the channel. Now let's go ahead and talk about this Orzhov Midrange deck, because I love everything and what's going on with this. And it goes absolutely insane with a new card from Aether Drift and Ketramos the New Dawn. I know that, Tarkir Dragonstorm is out and Ketramos technically isn't new anymore, but this has been kind of the thing to really jumpstart the Orzhov Midrange deck and really kind of take it from being a very solid option in the format to just being able to absolutely decimate some of the other decks looking to play a longer game. So Ketramos is a 3-mana 4/4 Menace, Lifelink, Indestructible. Can't attack or block unless there are 7 or more cards in exile, and whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from graveyards and or the battlefield during your turn, you draw a card and lose a life. Now, there's definitely some pretty peculiar, some pretty bad situations you can get in when your opponent's playing a super hyper aggressive deck. I've noticed that this deck, at least for me, can struggle from time to time against some of the domain aggro decks, and domain's been kind of waxing and waning, probably just on the outside of the top 5 most played decks in Modern. But it is a deck that people do play, and when you're trying to do the Ketramos thing, you do want to kind of have a pretty high life total so you can draw as many cards as you can to try to find some of your answers for what your opponents actually have going on. And there are some situations you can get into, unfortunately, where you're trying to gain life and you can't necessarily, do that. And it's going to be, Ketramos does kind of soften that a little bit when you're able to exile enough cards to, draw enough cards and then also get this thing to attack or be able to block and stay back on defense, potentially trade, or not even really trade, but your opponent's going to trade off some of their creatures to try to get in damage. So Ketramos, you kind of live and die by this card, but I think it's one of the best cards in the Orzhov builds right now. And you kind of have a few nice synergies of the deck to kind of abuse, exiling 1 or more cards from the graveyard and or the battlefield, with most of them mainly being from the graveyard. So in this list in particular, we have 3 Relic of Progenitus. 1 mana, you can tap it and remove a card from from a graveyard from the game, and this allows you to essentially draw a card with Ketramos. Of course, being able to interact with the graveyard becomes more and more important as, Magic releases more sets. The graveyard becomes more of a resource. Relic of Progenitus is a card that's going to be very nice to kind of eat your opponent's graveyard, in small little bits, while also going to draw you cards from Ketramos. And it has another ability where you can pay 1 and remove Relic of Progenitus from the game and remove all cards from the graveyard from the game and draw a card. This is essentially going to be an ancestral of sorts, because you're going to remove the relic from the battlefield, from the game, triggering the Ketramos to draw you a card. Then you're going to remove all cards from all graveyards, which is going to draw you another card from Ketramos, and then you're going to draw a card from Relic of Progenitus. So essentially, you're going to lose 2 life, draw 3 cards with that bottom ability, as long as there is a single card in either graveyard to exile with Relic of Progenitus here. But mainly, it's going to be used to draw you an individual card, every single turn. Even doing this to yourself isn't really that bad when you're playing, various different lands that you can just kind of get rid of from your graveyard if you really need to draw a card here. Another card is Emperor Bones, and I've been absolutely loving this card. I've been playing a list that's playing about 3 to 4 copies, I believe, in the main of this card, and I just absolutely love it. So 2 mana 2/2 at the beginning of combat. On your turn, you exile up to 1 target creature card from a graveyard, and if you are, you have the correct stops on like Magic Online, or you verbalize it in paper, you can just eat a creature from the graveyard at the beginning of combat, and then still in the beginning of combat adapt it for 1 and a black. So you're going to put 2+1/+1 counters on this, and then whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Emperor Bones, you put a creature card exile with Emperor Bones onto the battlefield under your control, the finale counter on it. It gains haste, and you sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step, meaning that you're able to get, something out of your graveyard, or maybe out of your opponent's graveyard. There is a lot of Eldrazi kind of rolling around, and I did end up actually eating someone's Emrakul the Promised End and whacking them with it for 13 and just putting it down to I think 3. It's all right, I have 3 different threats that are lethal. 2 of them are flyers. Figure it out, homie. And on top of that, too, of course, Emperor Bones exiling a card from a graveyard. It doesn't have to exile a creature. You just only get a benefit if you were able to put +1/+1 counters on it when it has a creature exiled. So this is also going to allow you to draw cards with Ketramos, almost guaranteed every single turn. Plus, a 4/4 body is pretty big as well after it's kind of done its thing. We also see 4 copies of Phalia Exuberant Shepherd. This is also going to be a thing that exiles things from the battlefield that will allow you to draw cards with Ketramos. But this also being able to blink non-land permanents means that when you play an Overlord of the Baelmerk for its impend cost, you're able to flicker it with the Phalia. The Phalia is, whether it dies or not, the Overlord is going to come back. It's going to be a 5/5. You're going to get additional trigger to be able to get a card back. And even if your opponent ends up killing the Phalia, then from the Overlord of the Baelmerk, or from that kind of flip, Overlord is just going to be able to bring back the Phalia as well. Just making sure that you have essentially access to at least 1 Phalia that's going to be able to kind of blink these things. You can use some very powerful ETBs. Witch Enchanter as well has been a pretty solid card in the format where just enters is going to destroy a target artifact or enchantment opponent controls, meaning that you can never really accidentally blow up your own Relic of Progenitus if your opponent doesn't have any artifacts on the battlefield. And this works very well because with cards like the Witch Enchanter, which are lands on the other side, and Bogart Trawler, which is also a land on the other side, you get to play this card Flickerwisp and get an insane amount of value from it, to where on turn 3, you can play one of these cards untapped at the cost of 3 life, and then play Flickerwisp and target that specific land, and with how it ends up working, Flickerwisp will return it to the battlefield, and it'll actually come back on its front side, which is a creature. If you do this to a Belcher player, and they have one of their lands is just a spell, you essentially get to Stone Rain them, because cards like that cannot come back as instant or sorceries. They're not permanents. But since Bogart Trawler and Witch Enchanter are creatures on their front side, Flickerwisp will return them to the battlefield on their front side, meaning you get their enter the battlefield ability. So you can exile, somebody's graveyard, or you can blow up an enchantment or artifact that your opponent controls. So definitely some pretty cool synergy there with Flickerwisp. Of course, also getting to exile cards, meaning that Ketramos the New Dawn will allow you to draw cards. This also allows you to flicker Ketramos. You'll end up getting to draw a card maybe after getting to attack and be able to leave it back on defense as well in a lot of cases. And we have Orcish Bowmaster here, which is a very solid creature. It's a creature that I really liked, and in a list that I'm playing currently doesn't play an Orcish Bowmaster, and there's been quite a few times where I'm like, man, I just wish I had an Orcish Bowmaster to play, because this card is really good. there's a reason why, even up till now, it's been one of the best cards. There's a long time where, people thought it was the best card and thought it was the best counter to like the One Ring, and then like the One Ring's gone and this doesn't see nearly as much play, but it is a very powerful Magic the Gathering card, if I do say so myself. Of course, you're playing for Solitude as well. This is going to be pretty nice for like its evoke cost, where you get to sacrifice it by pitching a white card, and then like with Overlord kind of being able to, pick things up from your graveyard, Solitude is going to be a nice pickup because you essentially get a removal spell. Same thing with these other flip creatures that are lands on the other side, where Overlord can just grab these and you end up having a land drop for the turn, which is pretty key for this Orzhov deck. Looking at the spells, you have Ephemerate, and Ephemerate works pretty well with cards like Flickerwisp. This allows you to like play a Flickerwisp and flicker something else and then bring the card back on your turn, like more likely a Overlord of the Baelmerg. And then following up like Ephemerate with like a Flickerwisp on like your own end step, you can then flicker out somebody's land, or doing it on your opponent's end step, you can flicker out one of their things, and it's not going to return until your next end step or their next end step. Obviously the opposite turn that you've actually done this, and you're able to kind of clear the way for your creatures. And same thing with Thalia, where she can attack, she just exiles up to one other target non-land permanent. So as long as, you target your opponent's thing, you're not going to get a counter on this. But, there's been plenty of times like playing Thalia or playing Flickerwisp that it's just been useful to get a big creature out of the way to allow your smaller creatures to get in a big attack and put your opponent at a very low life total, where it doesn't matter if they play another creature on top of getting their other creature back, they're just not going to have enough things on board to be able to beat the amount of pressure that you're putting on the board. So really nice there. And Ephemerate also just having rebound means that you're able to, re-up on like Solitude, re-up on Overlords. If you don't necessarily have a good attack, you can just go and kind of get some card advantage that way. Bogart Trawler, Witch Enchanter, of course, getting to blow something up or nuke the graveyard. Reset Emperor Bones, get additional triggers off Bowmaster, and even just the secret mode of this card, essentially cycling itself with the Ketramos in play to allow you to draw a card on top of getting whatever value from an Enter the Battlefield ability you have. 3 Fatal Push, 4 Thoughtseize. I don't know if I really like 4 Thoughtseize in this current metagame, but, it seems like it's been a very solid card, so probably worth playing it. But if you went down to like 2 or 3, I really wouldn't be that upset. 3 Fatal Push, I think, is pretty stock at this point, and just a very good removal spell currently in Modern. 2 Prismatic Ending. This is pretty interesting, I would say. I would almost like to play March of the Otherworldly Light instead of Prismatic Ending, because Ketramos can get you a ton of cards, and that's like a way that you can kind of use those extra cards while also remaining pretty mana efficient to be able to exile things. But Prismatic Ending has served me pretty well here in kind of like my playtesting with the deck, so I do kind of recommend at least Prismatic Ending, or if you're not going to play this card, probably playing something like March of the Otherworldly Light is like a pretty good answer to some of the other, non-land things going on, where this is going to be a little bit more flexible. There seems to be like a lot of control going around, so I would personally like actually, I'm not even sure if March can actually get rid of Planeswalkers here. I think it's the black one that does. But in either case, like you have plenty of white cards for like March that you can just kind of pitch extra cards to it and remain mana efficient for. But Prismatic Ending has been pretty good. Mana base, 2 Bleach, Bone, Verge, an Arid Mesa, 2 Flooded Strand, 2 Godless Shrine, 4 Marsh Flats, 2 Plains, 2 Swamps. There's a list I'm playing that only plays 1 swamp, and this one is playing 2. Assuming this is for the various like Blood Moon type effects, and of course with control being a little bit more prevalent, there's a lot more like Demolition Field and the other one that blows up lands, Field of Ruin. So probably okay playing these. Also, those decks playing Path to Exile too, so you want to make sure you have basics to go get. And 2 Shadowy Backstreet, the black-white Surveil land. Sideboard, 1 Duress, 3 Orcish Bowmaster, 4 White Orchid Phantom. This has been, obviously great against the various different Eldrazi decks in the format. 3 Wrath of Skies. This does end up actually getting rid of, Urza Saga, and ends up kind of blowing out some of the other Urza Saga decks. I mean, I've played against like Jeskai Ascendancy combo a few times, and when you're able to kind of keep them off, and then they finally just like throw their hand on the board, or maybe they're going to win next turn, you Wrath of the Skies for like 2 or 3, and you just completely decimate their board position, and with no cards to speak of. Even Interrupter I think is pretty good when it's especially better when control decks are really good, because when you plot a card, they can only cast it as a sorcery, so if you end up actually countering a counterspell with this, then you are able to stop them in that way. because then they essentially never get to cast that counter spell again. On top of that, too, just being able to counter like a Wrath on like a key turn to where then you can kind of figure out a way to protect your board from the Wrath or just even swing for lethal as well is really good. And then 2, Vindicate, an oldie but a goodie, destroy target permanent. This has come up quite a bit just as a way, like a catch-all spell for really anything that's going on. In the worst case, it ends up being a Stone Rain. Best case, it ends up blowing up a key permanent, something like a Torpor Orb that's going to be shutting down your deck that you're then able to kind of go crazy with your other enter the battlefield abilities and kind of regain control of the game. And yeah, that is the Orzhov midrange deck for the modern format. Again, this is a deck that I have played quite a bit over the last few days, and it's a deck that I've been enjoying quite a bit, actually. You know, I think there's a lot of nuances and a lot of things going on here that you really don't quite pick up on until you actually get the deck in your hands and you're actually looking at different lines of play, especially me being someone that hasn't played with Flickerwisp since probably like the mid-ish, like 2010, so almost 10 years ago at this point. There's a lot of cool things you can do with Flickerwisp, a lot of cool things you can do with Thalia and these other kind of blink effects that are kind of like, I'm not going to necessarily say like quirks in the rules, but like quirks in how they interact with each other. And this deck has been very solid and very good to me, and I look forward to playing it even more and maybe even playing some challenges with it. Who knows? Like, I've been absolutely enjoying it. I absolutely love the Catchermost builds. There's some builds that are even playing Aether Vial, and I think at this point you can kind of play whatever. Aether Vial has its own kind of things going on, and you can't really afford, I think, necessarily to play Catchermost in those builds, but, you know, who knows? This deck is going to see more innovation, and so are some of the other decks in the modern format, so definitely something to be on the lookout as we kind of navigate this new modern metagame through the regional championship qualifying season. So that's going to be for this video. Hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like on the video. Comment down below what deck you would like to see next featured in a video like this that you want us to break down and everything like that. And of course, check out all the links in the description down below for more content if you want to see more from me. And yeah, that's going to do it for this video. Hope you all enjoyed it. I hope to see you all in the next one.